No one could touch this bull until this little girl arrived. Dorothy Thompson watched from the kitchen window as her 6-year-old granddaughter, Emma, stepped off the intercity bus that had brought her from New York City to rural Pennsylvania. The girl carried only a faded pink backpack, her eyes still swollen from weeks of crying at the temporary orphanage. The moment Emma's feet touched the red earth of Hope Valley Farm, a thunderous bellow echoed from the barn. It was Thunder, the nearly 1-ton black bull who had become the terror of the property since arriving 8 months ago, carrying an inexplicable rage no ranch hand could control. "Grandma, what's that noise?" Emma asked, gripping her backpack strap tighter. Dorothy slowly descended the porch steps, feeling the weight of her 72 years and the responsibility she now carried alone. Her daughter Sarah and son-in-law Robert had died in a car accident 2 months earlier, leaving the girl an orphan and Dorothy with a farm she could barely keep running. "It's just one of our animals, sweetheart." "Don't worry," she replied, trying to sound calm as she hugged her granddaughter for the first time in 3 years. Emma barely remembered the farm, having been only 3 when her parents moved to the city for better opportunities. Now, at 6, she was returning under circumstances she never could have imagined. The scent of damp earth, the sound of chirping birds, and that distant bellow created a strange symphony that stirred something deep in her little heart. At dinner, served on the solid wood table that had been in the family for generations, Dorothy tried to explain the farm's basic rules. Old Joe, the 58-year-old foreman who had worked there for decades, joined them to meet the girl. "Emma, there's something very important you need to know," Dorothy said, choosing her words carefully. "We have a bull in the back pen who isn't to be visited. He's very angry and could hurt anyone who gets too close." "Why is he angry, Grandma?" Old Joe exchanged a worried glance with Dorothy. Both knew Thunder's story was far more complicated than any simple explanation could convey. "Some animals get like that when they're hurting, sweetheart. That's why it's best to leave him alone in his corner," Dorothy replied, scooping more beans onto Emma's plate. After dinner, while Dorothy prepared Emma's room, the girl sat on the porch, gazing at the stars. The country silence was broken only by crickets and the occasional distant bellow from the isolated pen. That first night, Emma couldn't sleep well. Every new sound startled her, but one thing in particular caught her attention: a low, mournful bellow that seemed to come from far away. It wasn't aggressive like the sounds she'd heard earlier, but something almost sorrowful. The next morning, as Dorothy made breakfast in the kitchen, Emma decided to explore. The farm was bigger than she remembered, with multiple pens, a small orchard, and a well-tended vegetable garden. She walked slowly, watching chickens pecking, cows grazing peacefully, and horses greeting her with soft whinnies. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Then she reached the back pen, separated from the others by a taller double fence. Inside, alone in a large space, stood the most imposing bull she had ever seen. Thunder was completely black, with white horns that gleamed under the morning sun and muscles that moved like waves beneath his glossy coat. The most striking thing, however, were his eyes. Emma had expected to see fury or aggression, but what she found was something entirely different. Thunder's eyes reflected a deep sadness, a pain she recognized immediately because she had felt the same in her own chest ever since losing her parents. "Hi," she whispered, slowly approaching the fence. Thunder stopped grazing and lifted his massive head toward her. For a moment that felt endless. Girl and bull gazed at each other in silence. There were no aggressive bellows, no charges at the fence, just a look that pierced through both their souls. "Emma!" Dorothy's voice shattered the moment's spell. "What are you doing there?" Her grandmother came running, followed closely by Old Joe, both wearing expressions of pure terror. "Get away from there right now," Dorothy ordered, pulling her granddaughter by the arm. "But Grandma, he didn't do anything wrong." "That bull has sent 3 men to the hospital, child. I can't play around with this," Old Joe explained, still panting from the run. Emma was led back to the house, but her thoughts stayed in the pen. During lunch, she couldn't stop asking questions about Thunder. Where did he come from, Grandma? Why did he hurt people? Was he always like this? Dorothy sighed with each question, clearly uncomfortable with the topic. Finally, she decided to share at least part of the truth. Thunder arrived here 8 months ago. His previous owner couldn't handle him anymore and ended up bringing him here. Since then, he won't let anyone near him. We've called vets, trainers, all kinds of people. Nothing works. What if I tried talking to him? No, was Dorothy's immediate reply. Promise, Grandma, you won't go near that pen alone. Emma murmured a promise, but her fingers were crossed behind her back. At 6 years old, she'd already learned that sometimes adults didn't understand certain important things. That night, after Dorothy went to sleep, Emma waited until she was sure the house was silent. She slipped on her slippers and crept out the kitchen door, walking barefoot across the damp grass until she reached Thunder's pen. The full moon bathed everything in soft silver light. Thunder was lying beneath a tree, but lifted his head when he sensed the girl's presence. "Hi, Thunder," she said softly, sitting down outside the fence. "I came here because I think you're sad, just like me." The bull stood and slowly walked to the fence, stopping just a few feet away. Emma began to talk about her parents, how much she missed them, how scared she was to live in a new place. "You know, I don't like it either when people get mad at me for no reason," she went on, playing with the grass. "Sometimes we get angry because we're hurting, right?" She found herself speaking softer and softer, almost whispering, and noticed Thunder had lain back down, but kept his eyes fixed on her. There was something deeply comforting about his silent presence. Without realizing it, Emma began to hum a song her mother used to sing at bedtime, an old lullaby about birds and flowers, with a sweet, melancholy melody. As she sang, she saw Thunder close his eyes, as if finally relaxing. She stayed there for nearly an hour, alternating between whispers and songs, until sleep began to overtake her. She returned home quietly, but with a heart lighter than she'd felt in months. The next morning, old Joe found something unusual in Thunder's pen. The grass around the fence was trampled in a way I'd never seen before, as if the animal had spent the night walking in circles near the fence, yet without showing any agitation. "Mrs. Thompson, something strange is going on with the bull," I mentioned during breakfast, while Emma pretended to focus on her bowl of oatmeal. "Strange how? He seems different, calmer. Even let me get closer to the fence this morning to check the water trough." Dorothy raised her eyebrows, surprised. It had been weeks since Thunder allowed anyone near him, even for basic care. "Maybe it's the change in weather," she suggested, but her voice carried uncertainty. Over the following days, Emma established a secret routine. After Dorothy fell asleep, she would visit Thunder, always keeping a safe distance from the fence, but creating a ritual of conversations and songs that seemed to soothe both her and the animal. She told him about her day, about the chickens she'd fed, about the flowers she'd helped water in the garden. Thunder, in turn, began showing signs that he anticipated these visits. During the day, he stayed closer to the part of the fence facing the house, as if keeping watch. Old Joe started noticing increasingly obvious changes in the bull's behavior. The animal that once charged furiously at anyone who approached now allowed basic maintenance of the pen, though still keeping a cautious distance. "Mrs. Thompson, I don't know what's happening, but that bull is different," he insisted one Thursday afternoon. "Today I managed to change his water without any trouble. Do you think he might be sick?" "Doesn't seem sick. Seems, how do I put it? Seems at peace." Dorothy grew thoughtful. There was something about the whole situation that unsettled her, but she couldn't pinpoint what. She decided to observe both the bull and Emma more closely in the days that followed. It was on a Friday night that she discovered her granddaughter's secret. She had woken up for a drink of water and noticed the kitchen door slightly ajar. Worried, she went to check and saw a small figure walking toward the pens. Dorothy's heart raced. She slipped on her slippers and hurried after Emma, bracing herself for the worst. But when she got close enough to see and hear, she froze completely. Emma was sitting by the fence, singing softly, and Thunder was lying on the other side, his head turned toward her. There was no tension, no danger, just a little girl and a bull sharing a moment of absolute peace. Dorothy watched for several minutes, trying to process what she was seeing. How was this possible? The same animal that had injured 3 experienced men was lying there, gentle as a lamb, listening to the songs of a 6-year-old child. When Emma finally got up to return home, Dorothy had to rush back to avoid being caught. She spent the rest of the night awake, torn between fear for her granddaughter's safety and fascination at what she'd witnessed. The next morning, she decided to confront Emma during breakfast. "Emma, I need to have a serious talk with you." The girl looked up from her plate, and Dorothy could see guilt and fear in her expression. "I know you've been visiting Thunder at night." Emma lowered her head, expecting a scolding. "You're not mad, Grandma." "I'm worried, sweetheart, very worried, but I'm also curious." Dorothy pulled up a chair and sat beside her granddaughter. "Tell me what happens when you go there." In a small, hesitant voice, Emma began describing her nighttime visits. She talked about how she felt Thunder was sad, how the songs seemed to calm him, how she felt less alone when she was with him. "He's not bad, Grandma. He's just hurting like I was when I first got here." The girl's words touched Dorothy deeply, who recognized in them a wisdom beyond her 6 years. "But you understand it's dangerous, right? Even if he's gentle with you, he's still a very big, strong animal." "I know, Grandma. That's why I never get too close to the fence. I just talk to him." Dorothy spent the whole day thinking about the situation. That afternoon, she decided to talk to Old Joe about what she'd discovered. "Do you think it's possible? A child calming an animal no one else can?" Old Joe scratched his head thoughtfully. "Mrs. Thompson, I've worked with cattle for over 40 years. I've seen things I couldn't explain. Animals have a sharp instinct for sensing people's intentions. Maybe the girl has something he recognizes." "But what about the danger?" "The danger is real, yes. But if what you're telling me is true, we might be dealing with something special." That night, Dorothy made a decision that could change everything. When Emma got up for her usual nighttime visit, her grandmother followed her, this time making her presence known. "Grandma," Emma exclaimed, startled to be caught. "Hush, dear. I just want to see for myself." They walked to the pen together, and Dorothy witnessed firsthand what she'd observed the night before. Thunder not only accepted the girl's presence, but seemed genuinely relaxed and happy to see her. "How did you know he liked music?" Dorothy whispered. "I don't know how to explain it. I just felt he was sad like me. And Mama always sang when I was sad." The mention of her late daughter made Dorothy's heart ache, but it also brought a new understanding of the situation. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now back to the story. In the following days, Dorothy began allowing Emma to visit Thunder during daylight hours, always supervised. The bull's transformation remained remarkable. Old Joe could tend to him without issue, and even other farmhands started commenting on the change. But not everything was going well in Dorothy's life. The farm's finances were growing dire. With Emma's arrival, expenses had risen, and the property's income barely covered basic costs. She'd received a few purchase offers in recent weeks, but the thought of selling land her family had owned for generations weighed heavily on her heart. Then, on a Tuesday morning, news arrived that would change everything. Mr. Anderson, their neighbor of 30 years, appeared at the door with a troubled expression. "Dorothy, I need to tell you something. Folks are spreading rumors that your granddaughter has some kind of strange power over animals." "Strange power? What are you talking about?" "Constance Smith from the general store has been saying the girl put some kind of spell on the bull, claims it's not normal for a child to do what she does." A wave of anger rose in Dorothy's chest. Constance Smith was known in the area for stirring gossip and creating trouble where none existed. "That's nonsense, Anderson. Emma's just gentle with animals." "I know, Dorothy, but you know how people are. Once an idea like this spreads, it's hard to stop." Dorothy's concern proved justified when, the next day, she noticed strange looks and whispers during her trip to town for supplies. Some who'd always greeted her warmly now avoided her or muttered under their breath. Things worsened when Father Michael from the local church showed up at the farm on a Thursday afternoon. "Dorothy, I'm here because some people in the community came to me with concerns about your granddaughter." "What kind of concerns, Father?" They say she has a supernatural connection with that dangerous bull. Some people are afraid. Dorothy felt like screaming. How could people who had known her for decades believe such nonsense? Father Michael, Emma is a 6-year-old child who lost her parents just a few months ago. She found comfort in taking care of the farm animals. There's nothing supernatural about that. I understand, Dorothy, but you need to see that this situation is causing discomfort in the community. Maybe it would be best to keep the girl away from the bull for a while. That night, Dorothy had a difficult conversation with Emma. She explained that some people didn't understand her friendship with Thunder and that it would be better to avoid the pen for a few days. But Grandma, Thunder will be sad if I don't visit him. I know, sweetheart. But sometimes we have to do things we don't want to avoid bigger problems. Emma accepted the decision with a maturity that broke Dorothy's heart, but in the days that followed, she was visibly depressed. She ate little, spoke even less, and spent most of her time staring out the window toward the back pen. The effect on Thunder was just as dramatic. The bull began showing signs of agitation again, though not as intense as before. Old Joe reported that he had started bellowing at night and seemed restless during the day. It's like the two of them are connected somehow, the foreman remarked. When one suffers, the other does too. The situation reached a breaking point on a Friday night. Emma had fallen ill with a high fever and refused to eat anything. Dr. Wilson, the town doctor, came to examine her and said there was nothing physically wrong, but the girl was clearly suffering from depression. She's grieving, Dorothy. She lost her parents not long ago, and now she's being kept from the one thing that brings her comfort. But what can I do? The whole community is against her. Sometimes we have to choose between what others think and the well-being of those we love. That same night, an unexpected event forced Dorothy to make a decision. A fierce storm hit the area, with winds strong enough to knock down trees and rain that flooded part of the pens. In the early hours, lightning struck near Thunder's pen, frightening him so badly that he broke part of the fence and bolted across the property. Old Joe woke Dorothy in a panic. "Mrs. Thompson, the bull's escaped. He's loose on the property and could run onto the road any minute." Dorothy's heart raced. If Thunder left the farm and hurt someone, she would be held responsible. But how could they capture an animal weighing nearly a ton that was clearly terrified? Where is he now? Last I saw, he was running toward the orchard. But with this rain and darkness, he could be anywhere. Dorothy woke Emma and explained the situation. The girl, still feverish, immediately worried about Thunder. "Grandma, he must be so scared. The lightning frightens him." "How do you know that?" "Because he always gets nervous during storms. I noticed on other nights." Old Joe had called some neighbors to help search, but everyone was too afraid to get near the bull. The rain kept pouring, making visibility poor and everything more dangerous. Then Emma made a decision that would change everything. "Grandma, let me try to call him." "Emma, no, it's too dangerous with him loose like this." "But he won't hurt me. He's just scared." Dorothy looked at her granddaughter, seeing determination and courage in the 6-year-old's eyes. She thought about all the community's prejudices, all the gossip and unfounded fears. She also thought about Emma's well-being and the unique connection she had with that animal. "All right," she finally said, "but I'm going with you, and Old Joe will be on standby." They went out in the rain with lanterns and coats searching for Thunder. They found him near the pond, trembling with fear and moaning softly. It was a sound completely different from the aggressive bellows he usually made. It was a sound of pure vulnerability. "Hi, Thunder," Emma called gently, stopping at a safe distance. "It's okay. The storm is already passing." The bull lifted his head at the familiar voice. Even in the darkness, Dorothy could see recognition in the animal's eyes. Emma began to sing the same lullaby she used to sing during her nighttime visits. Her childish voice blended with the sound of the rain, creating a strangely comforting melody. Slowly, Thunder stopped trembling and began walking toward them. "Come on, Thunder, let's go back home," Emma said, starting to walk back to the pens. The bull followed her meekly, like an obedient dog following its owner. Old Joe stood there, stunned. In over 40 years of working with cattle, he had never seen anything like it. When they reached the pen, Thunder willingly entered the makeshift space Old Joe had prepared to contain him temporarily. Emma stayed there for a few minutes, whispering softly to him until the animal calmed completely. "How is this possible?" old Joe murmured to Dorothy. "That beast was in total panic, and she calmed him down like it was magic." "It's not magic," Dorothy replied, a new understanding shining in her eyes. "It's love. It's trust. It's something Emma has that he recognizes." The next day, news of what had happened spread through the community, but this time, instead of fear and superstition, people began to show curiosity and even admiration. How had a 6-year-old girl managed to control an enraged bull when grown men couldn't even get near him? Dr. Wilson, who had witnessed part of the event, began spreading a more rational version of the facts. He explained to anyone who would listen that some animals respond better to calm, patient people, especially children, who don't show fear or aggression. "There's nothing supernatural about it," he said. "It's basic behavioral science. Animals sense our emotions and respond to them." Father Michael also changed his tone, now speaking about the innocence of children and their natural ability to connect with God's creation. Constance Smith, the main one responsible for spreading the negative rumors, was quietly urged by several people to reconsider her words. The social pressure was now on Emma and Dorothy's side, but Dorothy's financial troubles hadn't disappeared. In fact, with the storm damage, the situation had worsened. Thunder's fence needed to be completely rebuilt, along with other repairs around the property. That was when a man arrived at the farm who would completely change the course of the story. Dr. Richard Barnes was an animal behavior specialist from Chicago. He had heard about the girl and the bull through colleagues in the area and was genuinely interested in studying the case. "Mrs. Thompson, I know this might sound unusual, but I'd like to observe the interaction between your granddaughter and the bull. Cases like this are extremely rare and can teach us a lot about interspecies communication." Dorothy hesitated, but Emma showed interest in meeting the vet. Dr. Richard proved kind and respectful, explaining to the girl that he wanted to understand how she had befriended Thunder. During the observation, Dr. Richard was impressed not only by the calm Emma showed near the bull, but also by the subtle signs of communication between them. The girl seemed to intuitively understand when the animal was uncomfortable and adjusted her behavior accordingly. "It's extraordinary," he remarked to Dorothy. "Your granddaughter has a natural ability to read the animal's body language. She picks up on cues most adults wouldn't even notice." "Is that good or bad?" "It's a gift, Mrs. Thompson. A very rare and valuable one." Dr. Richard spent 3 days at the farm, documenting the interactions between Emma and Thunder. He also performed a full examination of the bull, uncovering something no one had noticed before. "Mrs. Thompson, I need to speak with you about Thunder." "Is he sick?" "Not exactly sick, but he has a condition that explains much of the aggressive behavior he showed before." Dr. Richard explained that Thunder suffered from extreme auditory sensitivity, a rare condition in cattle that made normal sounds painful for him. That's why he reacted aggressively when people approached him loudly or made noise. Emma instinctively always spoke softly to him, sang gently. Without realizing it, she was giving him exactly the kind of interaction he could tolerate. "Is there treatment for this?" "No cure, but there are ways to manage it. With the right techniques and proper environment, Thunder can live a perfectly normal life." The discovery changed everything. There was nothing mystical or supernatural about the connection between Emma and Thunder. It was simply a sensitive girl who had found the right way to communicate with an animal with special needs. Dr. Richard made an unexpected proposal. "Mrs. Thompson, I'd like to document this case for the scientific community. With your permission, I'd also like to bring other professionals here to study Emma's techniques." "What would that mean for us?" "It would mean turning your farm into a center for animal behavior studies. We'd have the resources to keep it running and even generate income through workshops and courses." Dorothy could hardly believe what she was hearing. The solution to her financial struggles was coming from the unique bond between her granddaughter and the bull everyone had considered a problem. But there was another unexpected development yet to come. Dr. Richard had mentioned the case to some colleagues in Chicago, and one of them, Dr. Frank Rivers, showed particular interest in learning the story. When he finally visited the farm, he revealed something that left Dorothy completely stunned. "Mrs. Thompson, I knew Thunder's previous owner. In fact, I helped raise him from a calf. Who was the owner? Robert Thompson. He died in a car accident a few months ago along with his wife. Dorothy's heart stopped. Robert Thompson was the name of her son-in-law, Emma's father. You're saying that Thunder belonged to Emma's father. Robert bought him when he was just a small calf, intending to raise him on a small property they had bought near New York City. But when they moved to the city, they couldn't take him. The pieces of the puzzle finally fell into place. The connection between Emma and Thunder wasn't just empathy between suffering creatures, it was a family bond. The bull had lost his owner at the same time the girl had lost her father. Robert used to speak softly to animals, Dr. Frank continued. He said they responded better to gentle voices. He also sang while working. He must have taught that to his daughter. Dorothy had tears in her eyes. Emma, without knowing it, had rediscovered a part of her father she thought was lost forever. When she shared the discovery with her granddaughter, Emma's reaction was heartwarming. So Thunder knew my daddy. Yes, sweetheart, he did. Your father took care of him when he was little. That's why he likes me, because I remind him of Daddy. That night, when Emma went to visit Thunder, she brought along a small photo album she had brought from New York City. She showed the bull pictures of her father, as if he could recognize the man who had raised him. Look, Thunder, this is my daddy. He can't come visit you anymore, but I can. I'll take care of you for him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The transformation in everyone's lives was extraordinary. Dorothy's farm became a leading center for animal behavior studies, welcoming visitors and students from various universities. Emma became a local celebrity known as the girl who talks to bulls. But more important than fame was the emotional healing both she and Thunder found. The girl had rediscovered a connection with her father through the animal he had raised. Thunder had found someone who understood his needs and treated him with the same affection his first owner had shown. Dr. Richard Barnes established a permanent research program at the farm, ensuring financial stability for Dorothy and specialized education for Emma. The girl began formally learning about animal behavior, developing her natural skills with scientific knowledge. The community, which had initially reacted with fear and superstition, now took pride in having such a special story unfold in their midst. The farm began receiving visitors from other towns, boosting the local economy. Constance Smith, ashamed of the rumors she had spread, sought Dorothy out to apologize. She ended up becoming one of Emma's biggest defenders in the community. I didn't know, she said, tears in her eyes. I thought it was something bad, but it was just a little girl trying to cope with her loss. Father Michael incorporated Emma and Thunder's story into his sermons, speaking about compassion, understanding, and the importance of not judging what we don't understand. Old Joe, who had witnessed the entire transformation from the beginning, became the official assistant for the research program, sharing his years of experience with the visiting researchers. In 40 years of working with cattle, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, he'd tell anyone who'd listen. A 6-year-old girl taught us all a lesson in patience and love. Dr. Wilson began using the case in his lectures on childhood behavioral medicine, explaining how animal connections can be therapeutic for children who've experienced trauma. As the months passed, Emma and Thunder developed a routine that benefited them both. She learned to care for him not just emotionally but physically, always under veterinary supervision. The bull in turn became more sociable with others, though he still clearly preferred the girl. The story caught the attention of regional media, but Dorothy was careful to protect her granddaughter's privacy, allowing only occasional interviews that might help similar cases. One day, nearly a year after Emma arrived at the farm, she asked a question that deeply moved Dorothy. "Grandma, do you think my daddy would be happy knowing I'm taking care of Thunder?" "I'm sure he would, sweetheart. I'm sure he's very proud of you." That night, as she watched Emma softly talking to Thunder under the starlight, Dorothy reflected on how pain can turn into healing, how loss can become reunion, and how love can overcome any barrier, whether physical, emotional, or even between different species. The farm that was once on the brink of bankruptcy now thrived. The girl who had arrived as a frightened orphan had found her purpose. The bull everyone feared had become a symbol of hope and transformation. But perhaps, most importantly, an entire community had learned a valuable lesson about not judging what they didn't understand, about giving unlikely connections a chance, and how love could truly move mountains, or in this case, calm bulls. Years later, when Emma was already a young veterinarian specializing in animal behavior, she still visited Thunder every day. The bull, now old, would still recognize her footsteps from afar and let out a soft moo when he saw her approaching. Their story had become legendary in the region, inspiring others to believe in the power of compassion and genuine connection between living beings. Similar programs were established at other farms, always following the principles Emma had intuitively developed as a 6-year-old child. Dr. Richard Barnes published several studies on the case, which became globally recognized in the field of animal-assisted therapy. But he always made sure to credit the real discovery to the girl who had taught everyone that sometimes the simplest solution is also the most powerful, treating every living being with respect, patience, and love. Dorothy Thompson, now in her 80s, often sat on the porch on Sunday afternoons, watching her grown granddaughter working with the many animals the farm now housed, each with their own special needs, each receiving the individualized care they deserved. Thunder had lived far beyond expectations for his condition, reaching 15 years, an advanced age for a bull. In his final days, he was surrounded by the same tenderness he had known since Emma first found him. When he finally passed, it was peacefully, asleep under his favorite tree, while she sang the same songs she had sung on the first night they met. The impact of their story endured long after. The farm became a sanctuary for animals with special needs, a behavioral research center, and a place where children who had experienced trauma could find healing through their connection with animals. Emma pursued an academic career, becoming a university professor and continuing the research Dr. Richard had begun. Her work helped develop new protocols for handling so-called problematic animals, always rooted in the principles of patience, understanding, and respect she had learned as a child. The community that had once reacted with fear and prejudice now stood as a model of how knowledge could overcome superstition and how open-mindedness could lead to extraordinary discoveries. Constance Smith, now elderly, often told her grandchildren about the important lessons she had learned about not spreading rumors. Her story became a local example of the dangers of prejudice and the importance of seeking truth before passing judgment. Father Michael permanently incorporated the lessons of the case into his pastoral philosophy, preaching about how God could work through the most unlikely connections and how the innocence of children could teach profound truths about compassion and love. Old Joe worked on the farm until he turned 70, always proud to have witnessed and contributed to that extraordinary transformation. His accounts of Emma's early days with Thunder became part of the region's oral tradition. Dr. Wilson continued to reference the case in his practice, especially with children who had lost parents or endured similar trauma. Emma's story offered hope to families facing difficult situations, proving that emotional healing was possible through unexpected connections. The legacy of Emma and Thunder transcended their personal story, inspiring changes in how society deals with differences, whether in animals or people. Educational programs were developed based on their experience, teaching children about empathy, patience, and the importance of trying to understand before judging. The farm continued to welcome visitors from all over the world, all eager to learn about the methods developed there. Veterinary students completed mandatory internships on site, and specialized therapists came seeking knowledge about healing techniques through interaction with animals. Dorothy lived to be 92, long enough to see 3 generations of her family grow up on the transformed farm. Her great-grandchildren grew up hearing the story of how their great-grandmother had saved an orphaned girl and a misunderstood bull, creating in the process a legacy that changed lives around the world. When the time finally came for her to pass, Dorothy was at peace, knowing she had made the right choices in crucial moments. She had chosen love over fear, understanding over prejudice, and hope over despair. The story of no one could touch this bull until this girl came became more than just a local anecdote. It turned into a symbol of how the most unlikely connections can lead to the deepest transformations, and how sometimes children can teach us lessons that take adults a lifetime to learn. The bull everyone feared had become a teacher of compassion. The orphaned girl had found her calling. The failing farm had become a center of hope. And an entire community had learned that judging what we don't understand is wasting opportunities to witness everyday miracles. Years later, when the story was told to new generations, the elders always ended with the same reflection. Sometimes the solution to our greatest problems comes from the most unexpected places, through the most unlikely people, and in the simplest way we could imagine. The connection between a 6-year-old girl and a 1-ton bull proved that true love knows no barriers, fears no differences, and can flourish in the most unlikely hearts. It showed that all of us, humans or animals, just need someone to understand us, accept us as we are, and offer us the patience and kindness we deserve. And perhaps that's the most important lesson Emma and Thunder left for the world, that in every living being, there's a story of pain and hope waiting to be understood, and that we all have the ability to be that special person who will make a difference in the life of someone or some bull desperately in need of love and understanding. The end of the story. Now tell us, what did you think of this touching story? Do you believe connections like this can really happen in real life? Share in the comments your own experiences with animals or moments when patience and love made all the difference. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.